Alright, so we're almost towards the end of the book of Tehilim, the book of Psalms. We have just about a couple months more to go. Many of the following chapters are small chapters, so we'll be doing several of them tonight. We'll be covering tonight 123, 124, 125, and 126. And they're relatively easy to understand and follow. Just want to remind you that Tehilim is a very powerful book. A lot of people just think that it's just a composition of prayers and praises, but it's really powerful. Many of the ideas that are expressed by David HaMelech refer to the end of days, Acharit HaYamim. This is a time that people will perhaps give up in thinking maybe Mashiach will never come, God forbid. This is a reminder not to despair, to be full of hope. And there's a beautiful chapter that we'll be reviewing right now that deals specifically with those days, what it will be like. What would it feel like when you see Mashiach? So these are very encouraging words. The Tehilim is therefore a book that should be read on a regular basis. We all need encouragement, we all need direction, but more than direction, we need clarity. There's a lot of ignorance out there. As a result of the ignorance, people have no clue what life is all about. What is the purpose of everything? Why do we suffer? Why do people hate us? Especially the Jewish people. What is anti-Semitism all about? So if you do not learn, then obviously it makes things more difficult. When one learns the Torah, learns its history, and learns Tehilim, he definitely will gain a lot of clarity as to what is the meaning behind the hatred, the persecution, the exile in general. Why such a long exile? What is God expecting of us to do? And as we've been seeing all along, prayer is something that Hashem wants us to continuously do. Not only because that is a way of serving Him, but that is a means of connecting to Him. That is a way that we demonstrate that we depend on Him. We rely on Him, we trust Him. We know for a fact that He listens to our prayers. Even though our prayers have been unanswered for so long, we still know that He hears them. And one day perhaps He will answer them. It doesn't mean that every prayer will be answered. If someone says, God, please make me win the lottery, there's a big jackpot. Not now, but maybe $100 million. And everybody wants to join. That's not a type of prayer that you should be asking for. Always ask to be content, to have what you need, not the jackpot necessarily. The real jackpot, however, is when Mashiach comes. That is the real jackpot. So when we're asking for spiritual things, like a stronger connection with Hashem, of course, that's a prayer that He always will love to hear and answer. If it's something which is not spiritual, if it's material, then it may or may not be answered, depending if it's for our benefit, depending if we deserve it or not. Either way, Tehilim is a tremendous concentration of tefillot, even though we have a regular prayer book that consists of certain chapters of Tehilim. This is a whole book of prayers and praises and thanks to Hashem. And the more we understand what we're saying, the more kavanah, the more focus and intent we will have. The more focus and intent you have in your prayer, the more effective it will be. That is why it's good to understand the words. We're not just going through the translation over here, we're actually going a little bit deeper than that. What exactly is David HaMelech expressing over here? So in these chapters, even though they're small, there are some very important ideas that are being expressed, especially when it comes to our relationship with Hashem. We have a different kind of a relationship when we're in exile versus when we were in Israel, when we had a temple, the Bet HaMikdash. So chapter 123, the Segula, the special power of 123 is in case someone had a servant that ran away. He wanted to come back to you. I guess perhaps a devoted employee or the like, even though we don't have slaves. But this chapter, for some reason, is good for that because it speaks a little bit about servants or slaves. So here, the general theme is about the long exile. Shira ma'alot elecha nasati et einai hayoshevi b'shamayim. So this is a song of ascents. We have here 15 song of ascents, ma'alot. And here he says, to you, To Hashem I have lifted my eyes. Hayushvi b'shamayim, you are enthroned in heaven. Well, David HaMelech is saying, even though there's great distance between us and you, we are confident that you hear our prayers. So therefore, I lifted my eyes to you. Lifting the eyes is a form of prayer. Even though words may not be said, it could be silent prayer too. But you're lifting your eyes. You're doing something to show that you know for a fact that even though there's great distance, He listens to our prayers from that distance. This is a time that David HaMelech is talking about, that the Jewish people are in Galut, they're in exile. The Shekhinah, therefore, is in exile too. It's not where it should be. Perhaps our prayers are not heard as much. We're being compared, as you will see in the next verse, to servants of Hashem, but not to His children. Even though there's the better or stronger relationship that we are Banim Atem Hashem Elohim, we are His children. During the time that we are in exile, we're more distant. The Shekhinah is more distant, and therefore we will be compared to servants. So that is why, if you look at the next verse, it says, הנה כעיני עבדים אל יד אדוניהם, כעיני שפחה אל יד גברתה, כן עינינו לאדוני אלוהינו עד שיחוננו. So here he's saying, indeed, הנה, as the eyes of servants are turned to the hand of their masters, they depend on their masters. They're being provided for and fed by their masters. As the eyes of the maid to the hand of her mistress, so are our eyes turned to Hashem, our God. In other words, we have that kind of a relationship. Servants, not children. And even though it's servants, Hashem still provides for us and still takes care of us, even though we're in the level of servants and not on the level of children. In talking to Hashem in this way, in this manner, that He's Yoshvi b'shamayim, that His throne is in Shamayim, what are we actually asking Him? Of course, it's obvious that He's there. We're basically saying, we would like you to be back down here. Even though Hashem fills the entire universe, He's everywhere, but it's a way of saying we want the Shekhinah to come back, we want the temple to be rebuilt. We want to have a closer relationship, not that distance that exists right now. But in Pasuk Bet, look at the word, the last word of the verse. We have this distant relationship as servants. Until when will that be? Ad sheyechonenu. The word yechonenu means until He will be gracious to us. The word chonenu is more than just gracious. Think of it as a pardon. You know, when the president pardons a criminal, he sets him free. It's a presidential pardon. That's what chanina means in Hebrew. Lechonen, to let him go, to release him. But to release him not because you need to, because you're being gracious. So gracious is correct here, but what exactly does gracious mean in this context? It means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being kind, He's being merciful. It means all of that. He's basically saying, yes, enough is enough. You've been a long time in Galut, and the time for Chanina, the time to be gracious has arrived. So we're asking Him to be gracious with us. And what are we asking to be gracious about? Look at the next verse, and you will see the word Chanina mentioned twice. Verse 3. Chonenu Adonai chonenu, ki rav savanu vuz. Be gracious to us, Hashem. Be gracious to us. You see how He repeats Himself? For we have been, I guess you can say, full or surfeited with humiliation. In other words, we've had our hands full of humiliation. Buz. Rav Savanu, we've had enough of it. We're full of all that humiliation. But why chonenu twice? So there's two types of chonenu here. The first chonenu is we don't want to continue to suffer in the galut, in the exile. We're asking for that because He's mentioning humiliation. And the second one is to come out of the galut. In other words, we're asking for the geulah, for the redemption. So there are two ideas being expressed in this one pasuk. Honenu Hashem Honenu for the two things. As long as we're in exile, we want a haninah, that there should be no more humiliation. We've suffered a lot. And it's still going on, by the way. Don't think just because we're in the 21st century, we're a lot better off. Yes, perhaps the standard of living is higher, but there's still issues, there's still problems. And then there's the honenu that we want the geulah. People think that just because they are making a living and they have a nice family, they have a home, that everything is okay. No, it's not okay. There's so much missing. A lot of homes are dysfunctional these days. Dysfunctional in many, many ways. So even though there may be income, there may be a job, there may be a prosperous business, so what? Things are incomplete. People have all kinds of issues. So when we're asking for honenu, we're asking Hashem to help us out in more than just one way. It's not just about the geulah. Even in the exile, a lot of people need help. But here's talking about the boost, the humiliation especially. That humiliation, as we mentioned in the past, prevented a lot of Jews from adhering to their values, to their religion properly. A lot of people gave up. They wanted to be promoted to a job. They wanted to get ahead in life. But because they were Jewish, they looked Jewish, it stood in the way. So the first thing to come off for these people was the kippah, the head covering. They don't want to look Jewish. They shaved off their beard. They started dressing like everybody else. There was one guy who did that. He went for an interview before. He went to the interview, he took off his kippah, his head cover, and he wanted to impress the people that he's just an ordinary American who's qualified for the job. But he had bad luck because the one who interviewed him knew that he's Jewish. And he says, "Where is your kippah? Who are you trying to impress? I know that you're Jewish. What are you removing your kippah for? What are you afraid of?" That's hypocrisy. Be who you are. Be proud of who you are. So it's interesting that he got that kind of a person. He didn't hire him, by the way. I don't want this kind of people. What are you hiding here? So that's, of course, an issue that many people have had to deal with, and people react differently. For many people, the booze was an impediment. In other words, it stood in the way, and they did all kinds of things to get around it. We don't want that. And the last verse of this chapter, Pasuk Dalet, says something very similar, in just stronger words. Rabat save'alach nafshenu ala agashananim abuz ligeyonim. So these are a little bit more difficult words, even for those of you who know Hebrew. But it's a similar idea to what it was said, to what he said before. Our soul has been overfilled with derision. That's lag, it means derision. And who is doing the derision? Hashananim, those who are complacent, those that live in tranquility, those that don't seem to have any problems whatsoever. Shanan. Habuz ligeyonim, with the scorn of the arrogant. That's the best word, I guess, to translate geyonim, the arrogant, let's just say. So here, David HaMelech is saying, we've had to deal with all kinds of mockers, all kinds of scorn and derision, but it's coming from two types of nations, those that are complacent or in tranquility, things are going well for them, and those that are arrogant. Why point that out? Why point out that these people behave that way? So the commentaries explain that what David HaMelech is saying here is two things. He's not only pointing to the fact that many have made fun of the Jewish people for a variety of reasons, including a long nose, all kinds of things. He's saying all that shame, all that humiliation, all that scorn will go back to them. So if you look at the words, Rabat sabalach nafshenu alag ha'ashananim, let the lag, let their derision go back to them. Habuz, who should the scorn go for? To the arrogant. In other words, all that they've been doing to us, that they've been doing to others as well, let it go back to them. So there will be a time when that will happen, that they will be humiliated, that they will be put down. And those who were once upon a time arrogant and thought so highly about themselves will no longer have reason to be so arrogant. And this has happened to the biggest empires. And today, some of those big empires of the past are very small countries, barely have any power, and their economy is in ruins. Chapter Kuf Chav Dalet, 124. The segula for this chapter is if somebody's going by boat or trying to cross a river. I guess this is somewhat of a protection. Chapter 124. So this is a song of ascents by David. Were it not for Hashem who was with us, let Israel declare. That's verse 1. What is he saying? Let Israel declare. He's pointing out a fact that even non-Jews have observed. For example, Mark Twain. Had it not been for Hashem, who's been protecting us, Lulei Hashem shehaya lanu, had it not been for God who was with us, let Israel declare. In other words, let the Jewish people say this to everyone, because apparently a lot of non-Jews had this question mark, including Mark Twain, who writes in different words, I don't understand what's going on here. All these big empires have vanished, have disappeared. The Jews saw them. He was beaten by them. He's still around and they're gone. He ends that beautiful description of past history with a question, what is the secret of their immortality? Beautiful words if you ever get a chance to read Mark Twain, what he wrote about the Jews. But he remains with a question mark because he doesn't know what the answer is. The answer we spoke about last week. Hashem protects us. So here he says the same thing in different words, that we will declare to the world. We will be saying it, and it will become more and more apparent as time goes by, that Lulei Hashem shehaya, had it not been for Hashem, we would never have survived. It's against all odds. Against all the odds. It's impossible. It's a real miracle. Look at the next pasuk, and you will see a very interesting word. Lulei Adonai shehaya lanu bekum aleinu adam. So he repeats the same idea, that had it not been for Hashem, who was with us, when men rose up against us, bekum aleinu adam. Who's this Adam? Men? Just say nations, just say enemies. That's the more common word that he's used all along. Why use the word Adam over here? Adam is the one leader who started everything. It could be Haman in Persia. It could be Paro in Egypt. It could be Hitler. It's one man. Oh, that's all it takes. One man. And it could have been the cardinal in some of the cities in Eastern Europe, where they were very powerful. All it was sometimes one man that caused all the trouble, that steered all the problems. And the masses followed. And why did the masses follow this one man? Because they're ignorant. He's charismatic, and he said something that makes some sense to them. It's the fault of the Jews. And there was usually no truth to it. But they were the scapegoat. Now, do you think it's completely his idea? It's all from Shammai. The thing is, when Hashem wants to bring some persecution, when Hashem wants to bring about an awakening to the community, he's going to take an individual who he knows is capable of that hatred. He's not going to take a friendly person. And there were many, many incidents where neighbors of Jews in Poland and elsewhere who were okay, who had friendly relationship, did business together with the Jews, but because of the Nazis, all of a sudden they turned their back against the Jew. And then there were, of course, the exact opposite, those that were willing to risk their life to protect the Jew, they hid them in the attic, in the basement, or they took the little kids, the children, and protected them in a monastery until after the war. Apparently the Nazis did not check that place, thinking, well, they're all Catholics anyway. Many Jewish kids remain there, unfortunately. We never discovered. Today, only today, they're discovering their roots and realizing that they are really Jewish. But anyway, they were hidden. And those non-Jews who hid them, protected them, are called the righteous amongst the nations. And they have a share to the world to come. That he did something heroic. And I spoke about it last night when we spoke about Sugihara, the Japanese consul in Vilna, who wrote so many visas and saved thousands of Jews. I am sure he's in a great place upstairs. I'm sure. So you have all kinds of people. And here he's talking about that one man. That one man who unfortunately was a bad shaliach. Shaliach means a bad messenger. Just like there are good messengers, there's bad messengers. Hashem used him. He's still guilty, but it was him. It wasn't the masses who were ignorant, even though they're to blame too. Why did you follow? You know it's wrong. That's what many people said. We were just following orders. That's not a good excuse. So had it not been for Hashem that was with us, Bekum aleinu adam, when certain men rose up against us, we would not have survived. What would have happened? Look at verse 3. Had Hashem not been with us, Azai hayim bela'unu, bacharot apam banu. They would have swallowed us alive in their burning rage against us. Yes, burning rage. They would have swallowed us alive. No compassion whatsoever, no pity, not even for little babies. You can see there's pictures from World War II. If you talk about massacres from the 1600s, there are no pictures, just some documents perhaps that describe what happened, stories. But here you can actually see video clips. You can see pictures of what they did. Shooting a mother holding her baby. There's a picture of that. How could he do that in cold blood? So that's what I'm saying. Had it not been for Hashem, it would have been worse. It was bad enough, of course. But had it not been that Hashem was with it, could you imagine what they would do? And it's not just that we're taking away their livelihood. There's harot apam banu. They're mad. There's a rage in them. Some say we killed their God. Does that sound familiar? They're upset. What are you upset at? If it's your God, then he should have protected himself. I never understood that. What are you exactly upset about? Anyway, he was Jewish. So why do you care? It's one Jew against another. Azai Chaim Berunu, had it not been for Hashem's involvement, it would have been, God forbid, a disaster. Why does he have to tell us this? If you recall on Pesach, we say it. B'chol dor v'dor omdim aleinu lechalotenu. They stand up against us in every generation. To do what? Lechalotenu. You know what lechalotenu means? To annihilate us. Not to beat us up. Not just to persecute. They actually attempt. Some of them do at least. Lechalotenu. They want to annihilate. And some of them have tried. Haman tried. Hitler tried. So don't think this is just a story that some rabbi made up. Oh, come on. They're not going to go after your children. They're civilized. These Germans, they go to operas. And they're very, very cultured. Yeah. Look what these cultured people, civilized people, supposedly were capable of doing. So, this is always a possibility. This can always happen. As we say in Haggadah, Pesach. So what protects us? Vehi she'amda lavotenu, the promise that Hashem made. That's what's holding them back from carrying out their plot, or at least from not succeeding in their plot. Pasuk Dalet, verse 4. What would have happened? He continues on to describe had Hashem not protected us. So it's not just about the masses being enraged, and who knows, God forbid, what they're capable of doing. Azay hamayim shetafunu, nachla avar nafshenu. Then the waters would have inundated us, the torrent would have swept over our soul. So what do you have here that's different than from before? Hamayim shetafunu. We're talking about the torrent would have swept over us. He's talking about major incidents in world history, including World War I, World War II, and Gog and Magog. These events are not just limited to a mob or to one country. When he says Hamayim shetafunu, when he's talking about torrents of water, he's talking about many nations. The Crusades perhaps was also an example of that. Invasions, entire communities being swept, in other words, being destroyed. That's being described in verse Dalet. What about the words Nachla Avara Nafshenu? The raging waters would have surged over the soul. This is just a description of the continuous trouble that we've had in the form of pogroms, plots, alilot dam, blood libels. Because it's continuous, every generation, often it's called nahala, like a continuous torrent that doesn't stop. Don't think, therefore, that just because things are quiet, that nothing will happen again. For those who think that things are quiet in this country, unfortunately they get a stark reminder with all these killings and shootings all of a sudden, out of nowhere, whether it's in a school or a synagogue or even a church. No one is safe. So if you thought it was quiet, people have changed. People are more mature today, are more educated. No. Evil will always exist. And evil can be in any country, in any religion. There could be evil people, bad people. And that's something that the Jew, of course, had to contend with more than anything else because he stood out. He was different. And, of course, Hashem was reminding him, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, I need to remind you because I don't want you to disappear from the scene. I have chosen you to represent me. I have to keep you alive. So what am I going to do? I'm going to remind you that you're Jewish. You're going to be reminded by people, all kinds of people, that you're Jewish. Unfortunately, they're going to remind you in a way that you don't like. They're going to hate you. They're going to go after you. They're going to try to kill you. But Hashem still protects us. He doesn't want us to disappear. But had he not been involved, look at all this. This is what would have happened. They would have swallowed us alive. Pasuk Hey, verse 5. Azay avar al nafshenu hamayim hazedonim. Then the raging waters would have surged over our soul. What are the raging waters? All kinds of terrible decrees. Every generation has them. Not necessarily just plots, conspiracies, but decrees. All kinds of decrees that oppress the Jew, that made life more miserable, including taxation, high taxation. You know how many times some Muslim leader told the Jewish community, if you don't come up with a large amount of money in gold coins in those days, I'm going to expel you. For whatever excuse he had, some reason. They've had to raise the money. We're talking about poor communities that didn't have the money. So this is all included in the raging waters that surged over our soul that we've had to deal with. It's important to read history. There's so many stories, so many accounts of this happening in just about any country you can think of. Even in the United States of America, people suffer because of their religion. Pasuk Vav. Baruch Adonai Shelot Netananu Teref Leshinehem. Interesting verse that says, blessed is Hashem, who did not permit us to be prey for their teeth. What do you think that one means? Not to be prey for their teeth? I think the best way to explain this is if you were an Israeli soldier and you had a choice of being taken captive by the Syrian army or the Egyptian army during the time that the Israelis fought these countries, every soldier would have told you, I would rather have fallen in the hands of the Egyptian army and not in the hands of the Syrians. Why? Because those Syrians were a lot more cruel. I've heard of pilots having their fingers cut. That's what I'm told. They very, very much mistreated the Israeli pilots and other captives as well. Even though they were all enemies, some were worse than others. So when he uses the words teref leshinehem, it means like prey for their teeth. They just want to take you apart. So the cruelty, the savagery by some of the nations was incredible. Not everybody showed that kind of attitude, but they were definitely capable of it. So thank God that we were not always delivered into the hands of these type of people. Otherwise, God forbid, who knows what they would have done with us. Many times what they did was they sold Jews into slavery, even into prostitution, unfortunately. A lot of things happened, but teref leshinehem, to be thrown to the dogs, as they say in English, that would have been terrible. So we thank Hashem for not letting letting this happen all the time. It did happen occasionally, unfortunately, but not all the time. So you see, when people read this, what is David HaMelech talking about? Teref leshinehem. They just think that it means that we're just not victimized. Well, we didn't victimize. We were victimized. But this is teref, to be like prey to their teeth. It's a lot more savage. It's a lot cruel. It's a lot more cruel. Because there were some who were capable of this. Pasuk Zayin. Nafshenu ketzipor nimleta mipach yokashim apach nishbar v'anachnu nimlatnu. Verse 7, our soul is like a bird which has escaped from the fowler's snare or trap. The snare broke and we escaped. It's a famous verse that sometimes there's a snare, there's a trap, and we are like a bird that was able to get away. How did you get away? Many, many examples, many, many stories, many, many miracles. I can speak just about this verse for hours because there's countless stories of exactly this example. You know how many times the enemy pointed a gun at a Jew and it jammed? It jammed. So, apach nishbar, it broke. That snare, if we can use this expression, this example, it broke. It misfired or whatever, and we were able to get away. I had a relative, my father's uncle, who was in one of the concentration camps, and they took him to the gallows for something that he did. And he said, Shema Yisrael, of course. And it tore the rope. It tore. They wanted to hang him. I think they did it twice. They let him go. This happened from time to time where people were taken to the gallows and it didn't work. Somehow it tore. They were able to get away. In English they say get away with murder. Now you know where it comes from. Yeah. All kinds of situations. I've heard of many examples of people who were already in the gas chamber. All of a sudden the door is open before the gas is released. We need a couple workers. After an hour or two, the camp was already liberated by the Russians or the Americans. They were mamash saved by an hour or two. This is all neshamayim. We call that hashgacha, divine providence. Countless miracles. Well, how do you explain that? That's what he means over here. Kitzipor, like a bird, who was somehow able to get away. And it's not easy for a bird to get away. This is not a very strong animal. We are able to get away from all of these enemies, like a bird, who was almost caught. But apach nishbar, something happened to that snare, but nachnu nimratan were able to get away. It could also be another example. The general the prime minister, the president, the priest, the bad guys, whoever they were, all of a sudden they died. This happened too, many, many times. There's stories like that too. And once they died, the decree that they issued got canceled. There's no longer someone that cared about it or wanted to enforce it anymore. So a lot of times there was some plan, and the plan was frustrated, was canceled. All of this is examples of a pach nishbar, that the snare simply did not work at the last moment. Pasuk Chet is the last verse of this chapter. Ezrenu b'shem Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Our help is in the name of Hashem, the maker of heaven and earth. We always emphasize this point. Don't think it was the American army, even though they may get credit for certain things, or someone else. It was Ezrenu b'shem Hashem. It was always the hand of Hashem involved. Very important point to remember. People forget this, and that's why he ends this chapter by reminding us these miraculous events could not have happened had it not been for Hashem. That's what a miracle is. It's not an act of nature. It's not just something that happens haphazardly, by chance. Ezrenu b'shem Hashem. So for those that have any doubts about it or whose emunah is weak, they are reminded. Hashem is the one that even though you may not see Him all the time, but He's there. You know, many Holocaust survivors have complaints about, where was God in the Holocaust? Sir, the fact that you're alive means that's where God was. He was saving and protecting you. What do you mean where He was? How did you stay alive? That they forgot about. You're wondering about everybody else. What about yourself? How did you stay alive? And a lot of them have many, many stories, entire books that they could write about the miracles that they experienced. But people do not pay attention. So we are reminded that Ezra, that help, is from Hashem. Chapter 125, Kuf Chaf Hei, verse Aleph 1. The segula for this chapter, if you're on the road and you are encountering enemies, 125 I guess is good for that. Anybody that has to deal with an enemy in the middle of his trip on the road. A song of ascents. Those who trust in Hashem are as a mount of Zion which never falters, but remains or abides forever. Here is talking about bitachon, the trust in Hashem that one has to have. Trust in Hashem gives one strength, tremendous strength. It makes them immovable, unshakable, completely dedicated. Bitachon. Emunah is of course very powerful too, to have faith, but what is needed, and we've spoken about this a lot, is bitachon. Those who trust in Hashem, because when things are not so good, or they appear like that, it doesn't mean that Hashem has abandoned us. Miracles are still possible. You have to hope, you have to believe, but what's required is bitachon. And that is why he says, those that have bitachon, lo yimot, they are like a mountain, like the Mount of Zion, that they cannot be shaken, cannot be moved. They therefore have a lot to gain in life because of this fortitude that they have. But why compare it to Har Zion of all mountains? That is because this chapter and the next one are already focusing on the Geulah, on the end of days, where the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, will be rebuilt once again. It could be that many people have given up hope that Mashiach may not come, God forbid. Those who had trust in Hashem, Kehar Zion, that just like this mountain, it will once again be rebuilt. Lo yimot, they will not falter. In other words, these individuals, you will not be able to get them to despair or to give up hope. And hopefully they will live to see it. And I'm going to explain that soon. What does it mean, live to see it? Here he doesn't say it, but he insinuates that they're going to be on a very, very high level as a result of their trust in Hashem. Pointing it out over here is necessary only because once the ingathering begins, once we do head back to Tzion, we need to trust in Hashem that we're not going to go back to exile. That's why he mentions it in association with Zion concerning the final Geulah, because it has already happened that the Geulah has come. We were redeemed from Egypt. We came out of Babylonia, but we went back to exile right after the second temple was destroyed. So there's a connection here with Zion and the end of days, because it needs to remind us that once this begins to unfold, don't worry, trust in Hashem that this time, lo yimot, leolam yeshev, you will stay there forever. You will be there for all time. The next Geulah, the final redemption, is permanent. Pasuk Bet, Yerushalayim harim saviv la v'Adonai saviv le'amo me'ata v'ad olam. Mountains surround Jerusalem. If you're ever there, you can see it today. And Hashem surrounds His people from time and time, and Hashem surrounds His people from this time and forever. This is a very simple concept that we've seen many, many, many times. That Hashem mashgiach, He takes care of us, He supervises us in the same way that the mountains surround Yerushalayim. He surrounds us, He protects us. In other words, those who have a problem with bitachon, in the first verse, number 2, he goes into a little bit more of an explanation. What do you mean that I should have bitachon in Hashem? How or why? Because Hashem really is there. You can't see Him, but in the same way that you see mountains surrounding Yerushalayim, that's the same way it works with Hashem's hashgacha. You just can't see it, but it's a fact of life. You still have questions? Go back to the previous chapters, where even non-Jews have declared it. Wow, what's going on? How did they survive? Well, that's the answer. The answer is, just like mountains surround Yerushalayim, Hashem has always surrounded us, protected us, been with us, and not like many want to claim. He abandoned us. He exchanged us for somebody else. He's disappointed, therefore no more Jews. I have some new Jews right now. Yeah, some people think that way. Yeah, some people claim we are the new Jews. God is upset at you and therefore abandoned you. It doesn't say that anywhere. On the contrary, it says just the opposite. I have not abandoned you, and I promised you, and I will keep my promise, and I will bring you back to Israel. And today, of course, we see the fulfillment of those prophecies. Next pasuk is a fascinating one. It is a pasuk that is mentioned by the rabbis in a very interesting context. It's called marriage. But before we get to that, the simple meaning of verse 3 is Ki lo yonuach shevet haresha al goral hatzadikim leman lo yishlechu hatzadikim be'avrata yedehem. The rod of wickedness, shevet haresha, will never come to rest upon the lot of the tzadikim, of the righteous. Therefore, the righteous need not stretch their hand to iniquity. That's more or less of a translation. What is he saying here? The simple translation means that Hashem will not allow that the rod of wickedness should rule forever, should always be on top. Because if that will be the case, then the tzaddikim, those who are righteous, by seeing that, it will influence them and they will want to be not as righteous as they are. And why be righteous if the rod, the power, is in the hands of the resha, of those who are evil? Hashem says, I will not let this go on for too long. In the end, you will see them coming down. All those who are evil cannot continue to be in power for too long. Otherwise, this will have bad impact on Goral HaTzadikim, on the lot of the righteous. How? Because I don't want them. I don't want them to, chas v'shalom, God forbid, stretch their hand to iniquity. They're going to become like the Rashaim, God forbid. So Hashem's, I'm not going to allow that to happen. What this could also mean is that Hashem puts distance away from between the evil and the righteous. He doesn't want them to live too close to each other, because otherwise they will have a very negative influence over them. So Hashem will not allow on His own that the righteous people should get too close for comfort. What does He do? I'll give you an example. There were the Nuremberg laws that was instituted. An Aryan cannot marry a non-Aryan. If you're pure Aryan, German, you cannot marry a Jew. Well, is that good or bad? For the Jew it was good, because in case he ever thought of intermarriage, he was told, no, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. They have to remind us. Yes, sometimes the Jew doesn't know this on his own. Keep a distance. You don't keep the distance, you will be reminded. In Iran, same thing. You go to the bazaar and you want to buy some apricots in Kashan. I think they have good apricots there, no? And you go to the marketplace and you start touching the apricots. Oh no, the guy says, Najas! You're unclean! You just touched my apricots and you contaminated them. Take them, buy them, or whatever. Why say that? Did I really contaminate them? What did I do to them? My hands are clean. Prove it to you. This is an artificial form of distance that is created for our good. For our good. Did you know that Khomeini made a lot of Jews in Tehran at least close their shops on Shabbat? He says, you're Jewish? You close your shop on Shabbat. You're supposed to be closed on Shabbat. He has to tell us.
They get all scared.
And a lot of them were scared. And because of their fear, many of them did not intermarry, did not assimilate. They would have, had there been no revolution perhaps. Right? Is that true? Mm-hmm. It would have been worse. In some ways, of course, we're not happy with what is going on there. But there were some benefits that came out as a result of that. You can't deny that. This has happened throughout our history. Lo yanuach, shevet haresh al gura. Hashem doesn't want the wicked to get too close for comfort. The other meaning, however, in the context of marriage is as follows. If we have a righteous man, he's a good man. Do you think Hashem will set him up with a woman who's not good? His soulmate will be evil? No, it doesn't make sense. Why should she ruin him? It's not fair for the righteous man. So usually, soulmates are supposed to help each other, be compatible, of course, and be similar in their values and so forth. I say most of the time because there's all kinds of exceptions. Now what happens if a woman who was the soulmate, she was good, she was married to her soulmate, made a big mistake. She went off with another man. She's a married woman, you know. It's a cardinal sin, adultery. But we don't know for sure if she did it. There's suspicions. That is the parasha of Sotah in the Torah. She needs to be examined. There's a way to do it. What for? There's no witnesses. Do we really care if it happened or not? Of course we care. It's not fair for the husband to continue to live with such a woman who, if in fact, indeed, committed such a terrible sin. He doesn't deserve to live with that kind of woman. So Hashem wants to separate them. So this may bring about their separation. And if it's not true, it will restore the love and the trust between them that was weakened as a result of his suspicions. He was suspicious. He saw her doing all kinds of things, talking. You know, some men are really very extreme and suspicious, and perhaps too much so. Hashem says, listen, I don't want this to cause a rift in your relationship. Let's settle this once and for all. Is it true or not? If it's true, I don't want the shevet haresha, the rod of evil, of wickedness, to be in the home of this righteous man. It's not fair. So he will set them apart. Pasuk Dalet, verse 4. Etiva Adonai latovim v'lisharim belibotam. Be beneficent, Hashem, to the good and to those who are upright in their hearts. Well, be good, beneficent to the good. Of course, Hashem is always beneficent. He's always kind to the good. The problem is that a lot of times the good live amongst the bad. We live amongst them. And oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno. Woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. If you happen to live amongst bad people, you might get hurt. Don't. If you can at all somehow avoid it, move somewhere else. But The fact is that sometimes people who are good live amongst the wicked. So David HaMelech is saying here, Hashem, be kind to the good, even though they're not necessarily the ideal, the best place. Hetiv Hashem latovim. As long as they're good and they're upright, be good to them. But what about the bad? The last verse. והמתים, הקלקלותם, יוליכם אדוני את פועלי האוון שלום על ישראל. So as far as those that turn to their perverseness, they're bad. May Hashem lead them with the workers of iniquity. May Hashem lead them to the path of those who are evildoers, sinners. And then there will be peace with or upon Israel. This particular verse is very misunderstood because it seems to be that he's just saying, let the bad people go with the bad people. Yes, that's true, but it's more than that. I believe that he's talking here about the end of days. In the end of days, the last prophet, Malachi, talks about a birur. Daniel also speaks about a birur. A birur means a filtration, separation between good and bad, between tzaddikim and rashaim. Today, it's not so clear. People claim that they're half-half. It all depends on their mood. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not good. They're parve. There's no such thing when Mashiach comes. You either belong to this camp or you belong to that camp. There will be a filtration. There will be a separation. So this last verse, verse 5, is talking about that those who are bad, evildoers, they will join those that are evil. They will join that camp, that side. When that happens, Shalom al Israel. Then of course there will be real peace. Right now there's no peace, there's no complete peace, perfect peace, because there's a mixture amongst us of all types of people. Not everybody has integrity, not everybody's upright, even though he's observant of Shabbat perhaps and he does certain things right. And when it comes to business, he's dishonest. That's not called righteous, that's not called upright. People have told, I'm Orthodox. There you are. Do you pay your taxes? No. I cheat on my taxes. I'll give you an example. You have to be upright everywhere, with everyone, at all times. Not sometimes yes, sometimes not, depends with who. So there will be a time that the two camps will separate. And that's what he's talking about in the last pasuk. Last chapter 126, one of the most perhaps beautiful chapters in Tehilim. This is a chapter that we say from time to time. It's short, but it's full of good news. It's all positive. And this is purely when Mashiach comes, a description of what will happen. This chapter, the Segula for this one, is a woman, unfortunately, who has had her little babies die at birth or not live for too long. She needs extra protection. So this chapter is a special Segula for that. Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Adonai Shivat Zion Hayinu Kacholmim. Does it sound familiar? A song of ascents when Hashem will return the exiles of Zion, we will have been like dreamers. The simple understanding means when Mashiach comes, it will all appear like a dream. Is this true? Is it real? What we're seeing, or are we in a dream? You know, you sometimes wake up from a beautiful dream. Oh, I wish it was real, and it wasn't a dream. It was so beautiful. That is how it's going to appear to us when Mashiach finally does come, and things are so beautiful, and so miraculous, and so great. It will be like we're dreaming. Is this real? And the answer is yes, it will be real. The second interpretation of Hayinu Kecholmim is all the past misery, trouble, wars, deaths will appear like a dream. It's all gone, like it never happened. The good days will make the bad days disappear, as though it never happened, as though it was a bad dream. So when Mashiach comes, we're going to look back at all those things that happened to us that were very, very bad, very painful. It was all a dream. But you know why? Why will it appear like a dream? The commentaries don't stress this point enough, and I always like to bring it out. The reason why it will be such a powerful, positive, strong, good feeling that it will make the past, as painful as it was, go away, is because there will be Tchiyat HaMetim. When the dead will rise and you will say, well, wait a minute, I thought you were eaten up by the sharks. I thought they made soap out of you in Auschwitz when they cremated your body. I thought you were gone forever. And all of a sudden, see, nothing happened to you. You look perfect. There are even some rabbis who say, concerning this pasuk bet, our mouth will be full of laughter and joy, because your grandfather will be younger than you. When you see him, depending on what age he left this world, of course, it could be he left when he was 50, 60, and you might be then 75, 80. Yes, Grandpa. So it will be funny. And that's what he's describing here. This will be an incredible time. It will be a dream because it will be surreal. So Pasuk Bet says, Az yimale sechok pinu leshonenu rina. Az yomru v'goyim yigdil Adonai lasot im ele. Our mouth will be filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then they say among the nations, Hashem has done great things for these, for us. Even the non-Jewish world will admit, wow, they're getting such VIP treatment. Look at all this. Look at all the blessing. Look at all the good that they're getting, all the reward as well. It will be easy to identify where this is going. This is going to them, who worked so hard, who were killed because of their beliefs. So we will be full of laughter and joy. We will reap the rewards of our hard work. And everybody else will say, wow, Higdil Hashem. Hashem has done so much for them. Look at all that joy that they have. Look at what is coming to them. By the way, whoever sees this will also have a merit to see it. Not everybody gets to see all of this. And I'll talk about it in a minute. Why describe it as a time of laughter and joy? Because there is a prophecy that says that when Mashiach comes, and the dead will rise and there will be no more death. Hashem will comfort us when He erases all the tears from our face. So when we talk about erasing the tears, how do you erase tears forever? Even though there will be tears of joy perhaps, but the tears of mourning will be gone because there will be no more death. On the contrary, the dead will rise. So therefore, this is a time of tzchok, of laughter. No more tears. And of course, at that point, verse 3 says, Hashem has done great things for us. We were joyful. Joyful. Of course. No, but that joy will be complete. Nowadays, the joy is not always complete. People have hard times, they have good times. They're making money, but somebody's very sick. It's incomplete. We're still in exile. There's no Bet HaMikdash. Our joy can never be complete. Under the chuppah, the happiest day of your life, we break a glass. Because our joy is incomplete until Mashiach comes. Hashem, only once your home is rebuilt will we be happy with our home. We cannot be completely happy if your home is not built. That's what we remind ourselves of by breaking that glass. So at that point, of course, our simcha, our happiness will be complete. Pasuk Dalet, Shuva Adonai Shebitenu Kafikim Banegev. Hashem, return our exiles as streams to arid soil. Part of the gathering process, part of the process of the redemption involves all the tribes coming back. All those who are distant from Judaism are also called Shebitenu. The exiles, I guess you can call them, those that will return. We're waiting for everyone to return. We don't want anybody to be left behind. And when they do come back, it would be like streams to arid soil. If you look at what's going on now in Israel, in the desert, in the Negev, all of a sudden you see torrents of water where there usually is no water. It's arid. And what happens to these deserts that are so dry after they've had sufficient water and moisture? All of a sudden you see it blooming out of nowhere, suddenly. And that's what it will be like. He says, have them return back as streams to arid soil. In other words, it will be in a sudden way. It will be in a miraculous way, in a way that we would never expect it. Make it happen, because this is what brings us joy when we thought that there's nothing there, and all of a sudden, wow, the desert is blooming. What we thought would never take place is happening. Pasuk, Hey, hazorim bedima berina yiktsoru. Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. Yeah, rabbis tell us whoever worked on Friday will have what to eat on Shabbat. If you don't work on Friday, if you don't make an effort, and you don't observe the mitzvot, what are you going to have in the world to come? Shabbat is the world to come. So those that worked hard, that really invested a lot, and sacrificed in order to remain Jewish, to observe the mitzvot, they sow in tears, a self-sacrifice, they will reap with songs of joy. Why with joy? What does it mean with joy? It just should say they will be rewarded. The reward is according to one's effort. I wanted to add as follows. The rabbis tell us that whoever mourned for Jerusalem will merit to see it rebuilt. It's a special merit to see it rebuilt if you mourned for it. A lot of people don't mourn. They just read what it says to read on Tisha B'Av. Those that really mourned, who cared about it, who cried about it, they will merit to see. But with them, they already passed away. So many of the great righteous people who did mourn, they passed away. You mean they're going to be around when Mashiach comes? They're gone already. So there's several answers that you can give. Number one, Hashem will bring them back in Tchiyat HaMetim. He does bring them back in the resurrection. They will come first. Not everybody gets up at the same time. Who will get up first? Those that mourn for Jerusalem, so that they can see all the miracles, so they can witness all of this longer than anybody else because they mourned for it. Number two, perhaps Hashem will bring them back in a reincarnation. You're going to be in that generation when Mashiach comes, so you're going to see it firsthand. You're going to have front seats. Number three, which is also possible, that their joy will be commensurate according to the amount that they mourned. Since they mourned a lot, their simcha will be even greater as well. In the last verse, Haloch yilechu v'cho noseh meshech hazara, bo yavo berina noseh levotav. He goes along weeping, carrying the bag of seed. He will surely return with songs of joy, carrying his sheaves. Also a very beautiful pasuk. A lot of people don't see the reward of those that work so hard. They're just suffering. They just seem to be doing things with no benefit, no apparent benefit. So they cry. They carry the load. They carry the seed. What happens later on, however? At the end, they will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves. They will realize that all of their investment did pay off. They think that there's no rain. Therefore, what good is all the seeds? What can we do? We don't see the Geulah. We don't see Mashiach coming. It's like people who carry a bag of seeds. Where is that going to go? What will that do for me? After the rain comes, all of a sudden they see that it paid off. They will see that all the hard work that we invested will pay off. There's a beautiful mashal. There was once a guy who had a big bag of seeds, and he was taking it from the store home. It was a long trip. By the time he gets close to his house, he realizes there was a big hole in the bag, and all the seeds fell out. He felt terrible. A couple months later, when he goes back the same road, all of a sudden he sees all the seeds that fell grew. Nothing was lost. Many people think that all their hard work was for nothing. It was all lost. When Mashiach comes, they will see that all those seeds that fell behind, that they thought were worthless, will produce and yield a tremendous amount of reward. And those are the mitzvot that we performed. Just to like to end, that rabbis tell us that Mashiach will come when a lot of people would have given up hope that he would ever come. Yityashu min hageulah. It will be like a time that people say, he's probably not coming, he didn't come yet. It will be sudden. The redemption, even though it's happening in stages and it's a gradual process, the final arrival will be suddenly. And when it does happen, it will bring a tremendous joy, tremendous amount of joy in song and laughter, but especially for those of us who, Baruch Hashem, have been looking forward to it. Amen.